This conference will now be recorded.
So we now move on to the next part of Unit 4 after antiprotozoal agents is anthelmintic agents or anthelmintic drugs or anti-helminthic drugs. Now helminth is a worm, okay, or helminth means a worm, and helminthiasis is an infection in which a worm is growing or existing in the body. So this helminthiasis infection is caused by worms which are parasitic in nature. When we did antiprotozoal agents, I explained to you what is a parasite. Parasite is an organism which may be unicellular or multicellular, and it completely thrives on the host body. So the worm which is infested in our body, it is completely thriving on the human body or on the host body for all its requirements, whether it is requirement of DNA or RNA, requirement of protein, requirement of releasing out its waste matter, whatever it may be, it is relying on the human body where it is growing. So if you recollect during your school times, probably you must have studied something about tapeworms, where you drew a diagram of the head of the tapeworm, and the tapeworm had hooks, okay, or it had pins over it, and it used to attach itself to the wall of the intestine. Okay, so this is exactly that type of infection which we are talking about over here. So what happens is, this type of infections are usually seen in countries which are not having good sanitation, no good hygiene amongst people, and our country is definitely one of them. So underdeveloped countries as well as developing countries, both of them see this type of worm infesting infections. These are more common in children or in toddlers, because they unknowingly or unknowingly or on purpose or without purpose, they are continuously putting their hands in the mouth, and they are at the same time playing around, so they are touching many different types of things. So they may come in contact with a surface, or if they are playing in mud and the parasite is existing over there, or on any surface for that matter it is existing, then after it is come on the hands of the toddler, it usually, the toddler, if he or she puts his hand in the mouth, it shall enter the toddler's body. Now in the case of adults, consumption of contaminated food, consumption of food which has been left open for a very long time, street food, all these reasons are there wherein there can be worm infestation or helminthic infestation in the food, and by consuming such a food, the patient starts suffering from helminthiatic infection. So for the treatment of this helminthiasis, or for the removal of this parasite, there are drugs which are called as anthelmintic agents. So these anthelmintic agents can do two things, or rather, they should do two things. One is they should paralyze the parasite, that means make it partially dead, and second is they should expel it out from the body. Now, when this parasite is inside the intestine, and like I told you, in the case of hookworm or tapeworm, they have hooks or tapes where they are attaching themselves to the wall. So when they attach themselves to the wall, they are taking in all the nutrition from the host human body. So what happens is, this patient starts feeling more hungry, because the worm or the worms, it is not that only one worm is going to exist in the body. The worms are taking in all the nutrition or the food that the person is consuming. So in one side there is excess consumption of food that is happening from the patient, because the worm is taking away all the nutrition. On the other side, the patient is losing weight. Okay, so this is a very contradictory condition where there is weight loss but the hunger is growing. So this is one of the symptoms that you can say that there may be helminthic infection in the child or in the human. Over a period of time, when the worms keep growing in the intestine, they start spreading themselves from the intestine, and they start moving to the different parts of the body. So one part of the body that they move is they move through the large intestine, and they reach the anal region. So once they reach the anal region, the patient who is suffering from this helminthic infection, because of the presence of this helminthic parasite, starts experiencing itching sensation in the anal region. Okay, and it is a vicious cycle that because of the itching sensation, the person scratches the anal region. Again, that worm enters into the body, and the vicious cycle of the helminthic infection continues throughout unless and until you treat it. So there is no particular season as such for helminthic infections, but usually summers and rainy seasons are the times when you will see a lot of children who are suffering from this helminthic parasitic infection, and there will be a lot of cases reported because food is contaminated, water is contaminated, especially in both these seasons. So these helminthic infections can be of different types. Like there is ascariasis, there is hookworm, there is filariasis, there is tapeworm, there is elephantitis. So there are a lot of types of worms which are involved or which come into this category, where there is liver fluke, and they all come into this category where they are causing helminthic parasitic infection in the intestine or in the intestinal tract of the human body. And sometimes, like I told you, they also start spreading to the different tissues in the body. So this requires treatment. This helminthic infection requires treatment, and they are eukaryotic parasites, and it is a very highly prevalent, like I told you, it's a very highly prevalent infection, especially in the underdeveloped and the developing countries. So what this parasite is doing, it is draining out the host for its nutrition. It is absorbing all the nutrition. So now you need a drug which will remove this worm from the intestine. So in this state comes in the anthelmintic drugs or anthelmintic agents, and these anthelmintic drugs or anthelmintic agents, they will remove the helminthic parasite from the human body, and either they will kill it or they will paralyze it, and they will excrete it out. There will be peristaltic movements of the intestine. There will be excessive peristaltic movements of the intestine, and the eukaryotic parasite will be thrown out of the body. Coming to classification of these helminthic parasites, they are classified as platyhelminthes and nematihelminthes. Platy means they are flat, okay, and nematihelminthes means they are rounded in shape. Okay, so you can see on your screen that the classification is visible as platyhelminthes, which includes cestodes and trematodes, and the various examples are quoted. And there are nematihelminthes, which includes nematodes and roundworms, and the various worms which come into this category are quoted in the slide which is there on your screen. So this is the classification of the helminthic worms or helminthic parasites which cause the helminthic infections. So how should an anthelmintic agent be? An anthelmintic agent should have a broad spectrum of activity. You are seeing over here that there are so many different types of helminthic parasites which we are aware of, and they are causing so many different types of infections. So you cannot have one drug each for different types of these for this platyhelminthic and nematihelminthic parasites. It is always preferred that you have a drug which acts on both of them. You may not be able to differentiate or identify what type of infection or helminthic parasitic infection the individual is suffering from. So it's always better you have a drug which has a broad spectrum of activity. The next salient feature that an antihelminthic agent should have is it should be non-toxic and safe for the host. Okay, now it is going to cause paralysis to the worm, it is going to kill the worm, it is going to throw out the worm from the body. So at the same time, this effect should not be seen in the host who is suffering from this type of helminthic parasitic infection. So it should be non-toxic and safe to the host body. It should be rapidly excreted out from the body. It should not leave any residue, and it should be easy to administer, and most importantly should be cost effective. Now cost effective because, like I told you, these type of parasitic infections are seen mainly in developing and underdeveloped countries. So already they are financially drained out. So you cannot have a drug which is having, which is very expensive, or which is having a very high cost. Easy to administer because, again, I told that toddlers seem to be having these type of infections more often. So it should be easy to administer into a toddler also. So it should be, we should be able to make it into a syrup so that it can be administered into the toddlers. So these are some of the salient features of anthelmintic agents, or the ideal features of anthelmintic agents: broad spectrum of activity, non-toxic and safe, rapidly excreted, no residues in meat and milk. These helminthic infections are often seen in cattle, okay, especially in cows. It is seen in pigs also. And when you are consuming these foods, these non-vegetarian foods, that time also, through the milk or through the meat of those particular animals, the infection is spreading, or the parasite is coming from that animal or the meat that you have eaten into our body. So that also is one of the ways of getting the infection, that is by eating non-vegetarian, unclean or non-maintained non-vegetarian food. Now we come to the chemical classification of the anthelmintic agents, and based on their chemical structure, they are classified into different classes. Benzimidazoles, the most commonly used anthelmintic agents, followed by quinolines and isoquinolines. Piperazine derivatives, these examples, piperazine citrate as well as DEC, that is diethyl carbamazine, they are also used very often. Vinyl pyrimidines, amides, natural products like ivermectin. This is one drug which is now in news for the past 2 years. Organophosphorus compounds, imidathiazoles, and nitro derivatives. So based on chemical structure, this is the classification of the anthelmintic agents. So this is a small picture that shows the target of different types of anthelmintic agents. So the class which includes imidazole and has examples like albendazole, mebendazole, thiabendazole, all of them you will see over here, they are causing prevention of glucose entering into the cell, and they are suppressing the production of larvae and eggs. They are blocking tubulin formation, so that if microtubules are not formed, then multiplication of the worms will not happen. Okay, then ivermectin, which is a natural agent, and it is in news nowadays, that is causing muscle paralysis and cell death in the parasite. Okay, so these are some of the targets of the different types of anthelmintic agents which you should be aware of, or which you should know. So among the benzimidazoles, which is a heterocyclic organic compound, it is a bicyclic. Benzimidazole is a bicyclic ring. It has a benzene ring and it has an imidazole ring, which are attached with each other. And the drugs which belong to this benzimidazole class are albendazole, mebendazole, flubendazole, and they are the most commonly used anthelmintic drugs. So this is albendazole, which is there on your structure, it is a benzimidazole derivative or a benzimidazole carbamate. You can see over here, this is the benzene ring, this is the imidazole ring, and they have been fused with each other to give us albendazole. Now this albendazole selectively binds to the tubules or the tubulins in nematodes. Okay, so albendazole, it has a broad spectrum of activity, and its mode of action is it binds to the beta tubulins or to the microtubules of the nematodes, and thereby it inhibits polymerization. And once the tubulins are binded and the formation of microtubules has been prevented, cell division of the parasite will stop. So what exactly is albendazole doing? It is not allowing the parasite to multiply at all. At the same time, it is also stopping the supply of ATP. You know, any cell is dependent on ATP molecules for its energy and survival. So by impairing the glucose uptake by the cells in the parasite, it is causing deficiency of ATP or reduced storage of ATP in the cells, because of which also there is death of the parasite. So in one way it is killing the existing parasites. In the second way, it is not allowing the parasites to further multiply. So further infection spread or further multiplication of the parasites is being inhibited by albendazole, and that is why it is one of the most commonly used anthelmintic agents. It also has a broad spectrum of activity. So you can use it for the treatment of roundworm infection, pinworm infection, hookworm infection, threadworm infection, filariasis. These are the different types of infections where you can use it. Now, if you see the dose of these type of imidazole compounds or benzimidazole compounds which are being used in the treatment for helminthiatic infections, it is usually just once a day. So once a day, maybe 3 times a week, or you can sometimes give it once a week for 4 weeks, so 4 times in a month. So by that you are ensuring that the drug is acting on all the parasites. You are repeating the dose after 2 days or after 4 days or 6 days to ensure that there is complete eradication of the worms which have caused this type of helminthic infection. Now, to have activity or the SAR features of albendazole to show anthelmintic activity, you can play with this NHCOCH3 ring which is attached to the aromatic compound. So if you replace it, you will get an inactive compound. So you cannot play with this NHCOCH3 ring attachment over here to the benzimidazole ring. Okay, and at the same time you can probably have variations done at the C5 position. However, you will get compounds which may be having low activity also and low toxicity also. So the SAR has 2 points. It is mandatory that you have this NHCOCH3, and at the C5 position you can play with different substitutions so that you get drugs with low toxicity, but probably they will have low activity also. So this is about albendazole. We come to the next drug in this class of benzimidazole derivatives, and that is mebendazole. Mebendazole also is a synthetic benzimidazole which has a wide spectrum of anthelmintic activity. The adverse effects of mebendazole which are seen are very rare or very less. They also have similar type of mechanism of action. They are also binding to the tubulins or the beta tubulins and inhibiting the formation of microtubules. So if these microtubules formation is inhibited, the polymerization is inhibited, glucose uptake in the parasite is inhibited, the storage or the store of glucose will slowly decrease. Thereby, first the worm will be paralyzed and it will die, or it will be excreted or expelled out of the body. At the same time, it will not be allowed, or it will not be able to multiply also, and the number of parasitic worms which are causing the infection will remain the same, or they will decrease further. Okay, this is the synthetic pathway for the synthesis of mebendazole, where 4-chloro-3-nitrobenzophenone is being treated with sulfolane, and it is going through a series of reactions where charcoal is being used as a catalyst, and after that methyl thiourea and methyl chlorformate is being used, and in the end we are getting mebendazole. The next drug in the same class, the next drug in the same class of benzimidazole is thiabendazole. If you see the structure, because there is a ring which contains sulfur, okay, and this ring is now fused, or rather it is being attached to the benzimidazole ring compound. The name comes as thiabendazole, which also has broad spectrum of activity. The advantage is, along with having anthelmintic property, it also has anti-inflammatory properties. Now, this helminthic infection is an infection of a foreign body being in your body. There is growth of that foreign body in the human body. So, it is natural that the immune system of the human body should be stimulated. So, that is exactly what thiabendazole will do, because of the stimulation that has happened of the immunomodulatory system in the host body. There is the patient is going to experience pain, the patient is going to experience abdominal cramps because of the infestation, as well as the release of T cells in the patient. Okay, at the same time, there will be fever like symptoms. You will see a lot of patients who are suffering from helminthic infections. They will show a rise in body temperature. So all this can be combated by this one drug of thiabendazole, where the thiabendazole not only has anthelmintic property, it has anti-inflammatory properties as well as antipyretic activity also. Okay, and of course, other than being used in the treatment of worm infections, it also has mild antifungal and scabicidal actions as well. Okay, so this is about thiabendazole. It's a primary drug which is used in roundworm and pinworm infection. And if you see the structure, you could replace the 4-thiazoline ring system, and you could replace it with a methyl carbamate, and you could get interesting active or more active anthelmintic agents. Okay, so in SAR there is only one point, and that is replacement of 4-thiazoline ring system by methyl carbamate group can give compounds which are having better anthelmintic properties as well. Okay, so this is about thiabendazole. Now the drug that you see two drugs on your screen. One is oxamniquine and the third is next is ivermectin. We'll first see this oxamniquine. This oxamniquine belongs to the class of quinoline and isoquinoline anthelmintic agents. And this oxamniquine is an anthelmintic agent which is having cytosomicidal activity, it is specifically active, or it can be specifically used against the Cytosoma mansoni type of parasite, which causes helminthic infection. Now this oxamniquine is actually a semisynthetic derivative of tetrahydroquinolines, and it is acting by binding to the DNA of the parasite. So by binding to the DNA, it is causing paralysis of the worm. It is increasing the contractions of the intestine. Now what these worms do is they have pins or they have hooks attachments so that they can hang themselves to the cell walls. So at one place the drug oxamniquine is binding to the parasite. After it has binded to the parasite, it is binding actually to the DNA of the parasite. After binding to the DNA of the parasite, it is causing paralysis of the worm. At the same time, it is stimulating peristaltic movement in the intestine. So in one place you have the worm which is become paralyzed. At the same time, the peristaltic movement of the intestine also has increased. Once this peristaltic movement of the intestine increases, eventually the worm or the parasite will get detached from the mesentery of the small intestine, and the worm will die, and further it will get excreted out through the fecal matter of the human body. Okay, so this is the specific mechanism of action of oxamniquine. And the main requirement or the main SAR point for oxamniquine to show good anthelmintic activity, the most vital entity in the entire structure is the presence of 6-hydroxymethyl moiety. Okay, so this 6-hydroxymethyl moiety should not be substituted, or it will lose its anthelmintic property. It is available as a prodrug, and after it undergoes metabolism, it becomes activated by forming its 6-methyl derivative, and this 6-methyl derivative actually shows anthelmintic activity. Say another drug from the same class of quinoline and isoquinoline is praziquantel. Now this praziquantel also shows cytosome activity, means it is also active against Cytosoma mansoni type of parasite, and it causes excessive spasms and paralysis of the worms which are infested in the intestine. So the drug will paralyze the worm. Praziquantel will paralyze the worm. The peristaltic movement in the intestine also will increase. There is rapid influx of calcium ions, and because of which there is paralysis in the parasite. Okay, so by increasing the concentration of calcium ions in the parasitic cell, it causes the worm to become paralyzed, and after the worm becomes paralyzed because of the excessive peristaltic movement of the intestine, it will get thrown out of the body. Now along with having cytosomicidal activity, it is also useful in tapeworm infections, and it is also useful in neurocyticerosis. Okay, so these are also the different types of worms which cause helminthic infections, and you can use praziquantel against these worms also. Another class of anthelmintic drugs, piperazine derivatives, which are 6-membered ring, and they contain nitrogen at the two opposite ends. You can see on the screen the structure of a piperazine ring structure, and way back in 1953 piperazine itself was introduced, having anthelmintic activity. From this class we have the drug diethyl carbamazine. So the parent compound is piperazine or piperazine citrate, and this piperazine or piperazine citrate is binding selectively to GABA receptors. And because it is binding selectively to GABA receptors, it is causing hyperpolarization of the parasitic cells. Because of the hyperpolarization in the cells, the worm becomes paralytic, and eventually it is going to get thrown out of the body because or it is going to get thrown out of the intestinal lumen because of increased peristaltic movements. So it was a very common drug which was used, that is piperazine citrate, which was used for roundworm infections, pinworm infections. These are actually the most common types of helminthic parasites or helminthic infections. So by causing paralysis, by blocking the acetylcholine, by blocking myoneuronal action, the entire worm becomes paralytic. There is hyperpolarization in the cell. It has also binded with the GABA receptor, and because of that, in fact, hyperpolarization has happened. So by doing all these things, this piperazine derivatives or piperazine citrate, the parent compound of this class, showed anthelmintic action. Further, from this piperazine citrate or this piperazine, then a better drug called as diethyl carbamazine was formed. This diethyl carbamazine is a synthetic piperazine derivative, and it is inhibiting embryogenesis. It is inhibiting or it is immobilizing the parasite. It is causing paralysis of the parasite, and thereby it is causing death also of the worm. Further, because of excessive peristaltic movement of the intestine, from the intestinal lumen, the worms will get thrown out of the intestine. You can also see the synthetic pathway of diethyl carbamazine citrate, which is being synthesized by the reaction of N-methyl piperazine with diethyl carbamoyl chloride. So this is the synthetic pathway of synthetic pathway of diethyl carbamazine citrate. We'll now come to this drug, ivermectin. Okay, it has a very beautiful structure. Tomorrow is festival time. You can draw this rangoli also in front of your houses. This ivermectin, if you have been following up with treatment of COVID or how COVID-19 is being treated, you will see one of the drugs in the regimen to be taken is ivermectin, to be taken twice a day for 5 to 7 days. So how come we are using a anthelmintic agent for a COVID-19 drug? Okay, now the reason is very simple. Actually, ivermectin is an anthelmintic agent. You see, it is made up of 16 membered lactone rings, and it was obtained from the natural class of ivermectins. Now, what ivermectin or the class of ivermectins does, it causes again the hyperpolarization of the parasitic cells because of excessive influx of chloride ions in the parasitic cells. So because the chloride ion concentration in the parasitic cells has increased, it becomes paralyzed. There is muscle paralysis and hyperpolarization. Further, it is causing the peristaltic movement of the intestine, and it is being thrown out of the body. Now we'll come to the fact that although it is an anthelmintic agent, ivermectin is also having antibacterial and antiviral potency. Now, in virus, it is especially having good activity against DNA virus also and RNA virus also. And you are aware that COVID-19 is a RNA virus and it is causing the coronavirus infection. Now, it is not that it first time for COVID-19 infection or for coronavirus the ivermectin drug has been used. Even before, it has been used in the treatment of HIV-1 also. Okay, since the drug has the capability to target some specific enzymes in the virus, like it is able to target the HIV-1 integrase enzyme, or it is able to target the NS5 polymerase enzyme in the RNA virus, and it is inhibiting the formation of proteins, or the formation or the synthesis of viral proteins by acting on these enzymes in the virus, especially in the RNA virus. It is being used for the treatment of COVID-19. Okay, so the viral activity of this drug is by inhibiting alpha beta mediated nuclear transport of viral proteins. It is binding to the NS5 polymerase enzymes as well as to the HIV-1 integrase enzyme. So this is the antiviral part of ivermectin. And the anthelmintic part of ivermectin involves opening of the chloride channels in the parasitic cell, and because the chloride channels have opened, there is excessive influx of chloride in the cell of the parasite, because of which there is hyperpolarization and muscle paralysis of the parasite, which is going to then lead to throwing out or expulsion of the parasite from the intestine. Okay, the last drug of this anthelmintic agents is niclosamide. You can see the structure of niclosamide. This niclosamide is active against tapeworm infections mainly, and sometimes it is also used in ringworm infections. So what niclosamide does is it inhibits oxidative phosphorylation in the mitochondria, and inhibition of oxidative phosphorylation is going to cause inhibition in the generation of ATP. So there will be no ATP because oxidative phosphorylation has been blocked. And if there is no ATP, the energy in the tapeworm or the energy in the parasite is going to decrease. Thereby, there is going to be muscle paralysis and death of the of the parasite. Okay, so this is about niclosamide, and in the class of anthelmintic agents, niclosamide belongs to the class of amides because it has an amide group. Okay, so these are the different types of anthelmintic agents which are available for treatment of helminthic parasitic infection. They are usually not used in a singular manner. Albendazole, if you are using it, albendazole or thiabendazole or mebendazole, if you are using it as a only drug for the treatment of helminthic parasitic infection, then you have to, like I told you, you have to repeat it either weekly once for 4 weeks, or in the same week you will have to take it twice and do that for 2 weeks, so that there is complete eradication of the parasitic infection. Or you could combine one or more uh, anthelmintic drugs, or one or more anthelmintic agents for the treatment of helminthic parasitic infection. Okay, so this is all about anthelmintic agents, helminthic parasitic infections.